All right. Hi, everyone. I am here. This is Kim, founder of the Open Book Company, and I'm here to chat with Toni. Toni is a public health nurse and wellness strategist. To me, she's a dear friend and the author of this book, Grow Your Own Way, Whole, Well, and Worthy. And we're celebrating 1 year since Toni published this phenomenal book that you should get your hands on. Toni, it's so good to have you here. Thank you for chatting with me today.
Thank you, Kim. It's great to be here.
So, I want to jump in and ask a little bit about what initially prompted you to say, Hey, I'm going to write a book. And I'm going to do this in a little bit of an unorthodox way. I'm going to read your own words back to you, if that's okay.
Of course.
So I'm going to page 2 of your book, and here you say, I began writing this book over 10 years ago in various stages, and each time the memories became too challenging to put into words. I'd let it be, promising myself to return one day, no deadline in sight. And that's how it was until I began to feel the need to share, allowing myself to reveal my most inner thoughts with friends, family, and strangers. My time for completion is now. So, talk to me a little bit about arriving at that time of completion. What was that nudge for you to say, this is the time, this is the moment to capture these stories that I've been thinking about for so long?
Um, that's a great question. And when I think about it, I just think it was part of my individual growth trajectory, my personal growth and caring for myself. I spent many years, I would say over a decade and a half, just really focusing on my own health and wellness and well-being, and not only in the physical form, but in the internal form and healing from um, traumas that I experienced throughout life, identifying them and saying them out loud, not only to therapists in the raw, but out loud to others. To hopefully resonate and help someone and that way only, because I feel that at the time I someone else wrote a book, and so I was inspired by them writing a book, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to share in this book, but I really knew that I was growing in some way. And the book was in me saying, now. Just so much is
Mm,
happening around me. I was like, now, do it now. And that's really when I said, it's time. I'm doing something in wellness that is not really looked at, but I'm also doing something within that's knocking a little bit louder to get through the next door of growth and self-care for myself. So
mhm.
it was just time.
I love that you talk about that voice and sort of like that knowing that you had. And I think that's really important for us to listen to because, to your point, the knock is going to keep getting louder and louder. And I love what you shared about this idea that for some of us, we have something specific, a story, a topic, a mission, and we're like, we need to get this out and we need to share it. And for others of us, we have a feeling like, I'm ready to write, I'm ready to publish a book, I feel motivated by this. And and for you, it was kind of a merge of those two paths. But I share that and echo that back just to remind everyone that there's no one journey or one spark to wait and expect. It's really whatever that message is or that kind of download that you get yourself that it's time. Um, and and you got it. And I'm so glad that you got it because there's so much good stuff in here and so much that I learned from you. So speaking of our relationship and all the things I got to learn from you, I want to talk a little bit about your decision to hire a book coach and your decision to seek out our partnership. Can you share a little bit more about what what that decision was like for you and what prompted you to say, "Hey, like it might be might be kind of helpful to have a partner along the way supporting this process.
Oh, I was very much aware before pen ever touched paper that the one of the only ways I was going to get through this was with support.
Mm,
That's I knew that for certain and for sure. I It might have been another barrier to me because I was just like, I need to write this book, but I need support. I need to write this book, but I need support. So where's that support going to come from? And at that time, I was really in spending a lot of my wellness journey in the cannabis wellness space. So it's the work that I continue to do today, but it was my primary work at that time. And I met this doctor who wrote a anthology. I believe I'm saying that right. ADHD, y'all, or is that dyslexia? It's one of them, but I got it. I got a combination of both. But so I was inspired by her book, and all the authors were there. And I just asked her about the process because it was self-published. And she said she sought help, and she had a team. And I knew right there that wasn't the type of book I wanted. I knew that the book that I was going to be the solo author. So I just leaned on that for a while. And then I had a woman I was working with to do some social media marketing for me in the wellness space. And it was her who I asked, hey, do you know any editors for a book? And she said, oh, I don't, but I know someone. She says, but let me tell you, if you're going to write the book, I do recommend that you get some help. I said, oh, yeah, absolutely, for sure. But I just don't know where to turn. And especially because in that mindset, I was like someone that would take on me speaking so openly about cannabis without judgment. And so then I was introduced to you through that chain. And that's where the story took a turn because once I honestly met you and we had our conversation, you asked me some very, I'll never forget one of the questions you asked me that I had to really think about this. First of all, I don't think until we met did I really take in the investment I was about to make in myself, right?
mm,
Um, I had not thought that out. I just thought, oh, a shiny book, I can do that. But what does that look like for real? So once we had our first conversation, I had to tighten up a little bit and ask myself, is this what you want to do? The question you asked me is to walk you through the day that the book arrives. I'll never forget that.
mm,
And I did. And one thing I did hit on me head, and it truly happened when the book arrived, how I felt inside. But I still was just like, I feel it, but I don't see it. It didn't feel, I couldn't feel what the book really was going to be about. And in that time, like I said, I was heavy in the cannabis wellness space. So I was writing from there. And just to fast forward a little bit, by the time we got to what this page two is now, it
okay.
wasn't where I came in at all. So it was the support that I needed. Knew what I needed, obviously, because you asked the right questions. You asked me, what did I want the book to do? What did I see this book? And honestly, I was after that I had to sit with myself and rethink of the quick answers that I gave you in that moment because it was really like, wow, I really, that was the surface, but I really don't know. Let me sit with it. And now, if I was asked that question, it would be the same, but a little bit more heartfelt and truthful and in depth a bit more. So, um, seeking the help was what I knew I needed. And being introduced to you was just like the icing, immediately icing on the cake. The cake was already baked and done. It was the icing. And especially that the first turnover,
Hmm.
the first time we had to look at my words and I had to honestly turn my words over to you. That wasn't I'm not going to say it wasn't easy. You made it easy. Had I not had these conversations with you before all that, I probably would have been a little bit more, oh my gosh. But I felt we developed a relationship that was like I felt like I safe and I could be honest and no judgment. And I might be speeding up a little bit, but I'll never forget at one point I had a deadline and I was going back and looking at some old journals and reading, and it just wiped me out. And I was like, oh my God, I got a deadline. Oh my God, I got a deadline. And I said to you, Kim, I can't. I need some time with this. Is this just wiped me out? And you said, take all the time you need. I was giving myself this pressure. And every time I did that, I felt like you were there to say, "Woosah, sister, woosah." It's going to get done. And we had deadlines, and we made our deadlines, but I don't know how we did it. Because I'm like, did she factor in that I was going to have a meltdown or two or three? So, it that I hope that answers that question in the large
Yes.
way. So.
Yeah, it does. It does. And yes, I did factor that in. No, with all respect to any of us writing a book, anyone who has published a book, the line that I've used recently is if you're not crying, we're not writing a book. And I believe that that's 50% of the process. We could talk about that in another conversation, but there is this aspect of release, and there is this aspect of taking the time to be gentle with yourself and to take that time, and to grow your own way and not to be following what you think is supposed to happen or what you see other people doing or what you assume other people are doing when it comes to writing their books. um, I want to touch on a couple of the things that you shared. One, I do remember back to, our early conversations. There really was a sense of like magic in our conversations, this sense of, I remember just having that connection, and also being able to establish that two-way trust that you talked about, because it's two ways. So I'm honored and grateful that you invited me along this journey with you. So I want to thank you for everything that you shared, and for your trust and for trusting me in this process. And I love one of the things that you mentioned here kind of ties back to how we started our conversation, which is sometimes the book you start writing isn't the book that you end up holding in your hand. For you, that was a realization you had pretty early on when we did that visualization exercise together. And for other people, it happens once they start putting pen to paper, once the story starts coming out. So I love the permission that you gave to yourself to say, hey, I can actually pause and go down a slightly different path. The destination of completed and published book is still the destination. I thought it was going to look this way, but I'm actually feeling a pull over here. And again, it's that listening and that pausing. And you did that. So that's something that I encourage everyone. Don't feel tied. I hear you saying, don't feel tied to what you initially set out to do. Allow that process to evolve and allow things to grow. Um, that being said, you have been doing a lot since this book has come out, talking about evolution and growth. I'd love to hear about how Grow Your Own Way has connected to your broader mission, all of the amazing work you're doing as a wellness strategist, and anything you want to share about your work and how this book and how this experience of writing this book or publishing this book is connected to your broader work and your broader mission.
Thanks, Kim. So there are two things I want to start with. One is the book, the Grow Your Own Way of it all. I remember, again, you just gave me breathing space. It was a title, a title, a title, right? And in my mind, I was thinking a title and I was playing around with stuff, and nothing ever nothing hit, nothing stuck, I should say. I knew for a fact the second thing that was up. This wasn't a self-help book. I'm not trying to tell you to do it this way. And wrote that in like, this isn't one of those books. This is
I
my
remember.
story, right?
Yeah, this is your story. Yeah.
And that's how we got to memoir. And so those are the two things that I Grow Your Own Way. I would think we were just in the middle editing and we still didn't have a title. I never felt pressured for a title. And again, thank you, but I never felt pressured for a title. And what I realized, we realized the thing I continuously said really from the beginning, right into that aha was I kept saying, grow your own way. I just want to do it my own way. I want to grow my own way. Somewhere, everywhere, it just kept coming up. And okay, grow your own way, grow your own way, grow your own way. And what I've noticed what the book has done, it has in my wellness strategist work that I do, it really helped me develop my framework. Okay.
Mhm.
Because what in the memoir, I realized that it took a framework of me caring for myself that's growing from my own way. We talk about the soil, getting the soil ready and prepared, right?
Mhm.
And movement. If I'm going to write this book, I need to move into it, but then you're moving around and seeding your plants and start beginning the watering and
Mhm.
letting it become part of my lifestyle. And the self-care that I was giving myself and the way I began to move really did develop into my life. And it was just all tied into my connection with nature at the time and each year, even now, the gardening that I do. And I felt myself really growing my own way as I watched my garden grow its own way, right? So the
Mhm.
mindset began to shift. And there was my framework that I realized was laying in my memoir of how I actually just once I tapped into self care, like what that really meant to me and looked like for me, because I spent
Mm.
so much time in what society says it should look like and doing the fads this and the fads that, nothing against it, but it wasn't authentic to me. I wasn't growing my own way. But when you go out and plant those tomatoes and cucumbers, each one of those fruits, those cherry tomatoes, they're going to grow their own way. Some may
Mhm.
have in root rot, some may be split and cracked, and some are going to be juicy and yellow and red and just, uh, but they all grow their own way. So that's the book has really allowed me to identify the framework that I share with others and the work that I provide them. It's not a one way. And what
Mm.
self care looks like to me may not look like to you. So let's look at what that does look like and how you can begin to care for yourself. Now, we can still go get our manicures together, but then that's self care, but what it really looks like. So, uh, that's this book has been, and I said this to you in the beginning, a business card of such for me. And I don't mean that in, hey, I got a book, but I mean that in it's an easier way for me to share with you the work that I do from the recipes in the back to
Mhm.
the movements that I've done throughout my life and really identifying that movement and self-care is not necessarily a yoga pose. It's movement in the path that you're going on. It's
Mhm.
given me clarity. It's movement in your reactions to other with how are you moving with that from within. But it's all it became okay for me
Mhm.
to grow my own way and share it out loud. And with the hopes, the only thing one of the biggest things is that others take it and say, yeah, I can grow my own way. I just,
Yes. Permission giving for you and for the reader at the same time. I love it. And I have gained so much from reading this book and reading your words and getting to partner with you on this. And to your point, yes, it is technically memoir, but and the beauty of it is that there is so much in your stories that is inspirational and that we can apply to our own lives that I do think it extends beyond the potential limitations of that categorization because there is so much that we can gain from it in addition to hearing about your own story, which is powerful in and of itself, and also taking it a step further to apply a lot of your strategies and things to our own lives. I love, I mean, because we work together, this idea of grow your own way certainly resonates for me. And in some ways, I'm thinking about it, hearing you talk about it even more and talk about your framework. And I'm like, our perspectives and the purpose that we bring to our work is actually very similar because growing your own way and going your own way is what I encourage every author, every writer, every would be published author um, to to do, to take your own path, to know that there's not one specific and one map to take you to where you want to go to that destination. So I want to end our conversation to circle back to advice that you might give yourself. So let's pretend we have a time travel machine and we can go back in time and you can tell Toni, who was at that point of, okay, I'm ready to sit down and write this book. What would you want her to know? What would you say now that you have the perspective of this journey that you've been on in writing the book, publishing it, and now being at the 1 year celebration of the book? What advice would you give Toni from back then?
Wow, great question. First, I would just say, Tony, just let's just take a beat. Let's just pause,
Mm,
be still, exhale a few times deeply, fully, and then really just be in the moment.
mm,
You're ready. Start taking your steps. See, we're a Taurus. I'm a Taurus. And we believe slow and steady wins the race. And don't get caught up in the race. Continue to go on your beliefs of slow and steady wins the race. Now you could pick up the pace a little bit, but trust it. Trust the process. I would tell her to fully enjoy the process and be kind. Be kind to yourself, be kind with your past, be kind to the things that come up in your past,
mm,
you know. Find someone in each space, perhaps in your life that you are sharing the words with or having them read. Some of the greatest inspiration I got was when I talked about my childhood and I reached out to my sister and I had to share a conversation with her. And I didn't go in sharing it like for her approval. I didn't think. But it was also one of those things like, why are you sharing this? And it just ended up down that conversation. And in the end, she said to me, "You're right." She goes, "You that was wrong. You were treated wrong. And I'm so
mm,
sorry, Tony. I'm so sorry." And
mm.
I would tell me that Tony at that stage, embrace and stay in those moments for a minute. Don't just let them pass by because that was again childhood's memories coming up through someone I love deeply and she loves me back deeply. And to get that permission from her, because that's what I circled back and told her, thank you for that permission, because it allowed the rest of the book. Be honest along your path, Tony. That's what I would say. Be honest to yourself because that allowed me to be a bit more free, a bit more free. And my pause to you after going through those journals, your permission, allowing me to, okay, it's okay. Be good to yourself and enjoy the process, the
I
journey.
love this. I love this. And you brought up two really important points about, particularly when we're writing about our own past, when we're writing about our own personal stories, a lot can come up. And this idea of being gentle and holding the space for those things that, and it also may be unexpected, we like to talk about the healing part of the writing process. And there is one. And it sounds like through your experience and what you shared, and I remember you sharing that story with your sister, relaying that to me, it was like, wow, this does feel like there's almost an element, I'm using the word, it might not be the word you would use, of healing in this experience. And the flip side of that coin is that not every aspect of writing about our history, writing our stories does get a bow on it at the end, does get a validation, does get a conversation. There might be some threads that are left frayed. There might be some ends that we don't get to see or to have, some closure that we don't get to receive. And I think what's really beautiful about your book is that you hold both of those truths in this book, that there can be some healing and that your last sentence isn't the end of your journey. It's ongoing for sure. Toni, I want to thank you so much for this time. Other than us going out and buying Grow Your Own Way, how can we support you? I know this is available. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, it's wherever you get your books. So check out Grow Your Own Way. And what else can we do other than buying your book to support you?
You can head on over to my website, Tony at Tony Wellness, Tony Wellness Official, and I'm on all social sites. If you're in the local Bay Area of California, I do host hikes and retreats, and I'm going to have another fall retreat, my second fall retreat coming up in 2026. And I am going to be taking this show on the road at some point. So follow me on all social sites really to support. And I even have a Substack that I'm on that, pause from for no reason. But and I'm Tony on Substack. I'm really Tony Wellness anywhere you can find me. And Kim,
There's
thank you
only
so
so
much
much
for
room
this.
on Thank you, Toni. There's only so much room on the plate. We got to put our energy in different places. You're out hiking. You don't always have time to be writing on Substack. You're living. I will say it is a personal goal of mine at some point in my life to be able to get on a hike with you, to make it out there and be on a hike because I've seen some of the amazing and really beautiful content that you've posted. And every time I'm like, I wish I were there. I wish I was with her. I wish I was walking. So a hike and a retreat, those are in my future. So as Toni said, check out her website. Thank you, Toni, so much. It was a complete honor, truly, truly, to support you on your journey and your path to grow your own way in publishing this book. I'm so excited we got to revisit it to celebrate 1 year. Happy 1 year birthday celebration to grow your own way. And thanks for your time today. It was a beautiful conversation.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you again. Like I said at the top of this, I could have not done this without you, and I'm so grateful that it was you. And we're forever friends, and we're forever connected, and continue both to grow our own way. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Toni.